Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know you're mine. And I'll bring you home when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. I want to begin, as always, by welcoming all that you bring with you to this space, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs and background and lifestyle and experiences and everything that helps make you who you are. And this is so for those who hear us say this each Sunday, as well as those who might be joining us for the first time today. You're equally as welcome and embraced. So welcome to one and all. Thanks to those of you who are joining us today via our live stream. We're also grateful to know that you're with us. So hello. Good to have you. Before we take just a few minutes to greet one another, a couple of things. One, I know there's still an awful lot of alarm out there about a little virus going around. And if you're concerned about that, when we have our closing ritual in particular, where we usually hold hands, there's a couple of things you can do. Hold hands, because you're all adults, you get to figure that out. Or rub elbows, or stand back and, whatever. But somebody last week from our congregation in Vancouver, Washington, brought a wonderful idea. And I'm just going to get maybe this fourth row. Will you guys stand up for a minute, or first row? Do the four of you mind standing up and demonstrating something for me? Okay, this is going to be easy. Okay. I'm not going to. I want you to each pull a different animal out of your hat. Okay? No, that's the joke. I used it the first service, but what I want you to do. I said hat, Don. So put your right hand over your heart, okay, and then your left hand on your neighbor's shoulder. Okay? Oh, Don. So Don, just have Don turn. Don, there you go, just like that, Don. There you go, perfect. Big hand. Big hand. So that's another way we can make meaningful contact, which is another thing to do. So you guys can figure that out for yourself, but I just wanted to give you those options. I also wanted to point out here at the start of our service that this is International Women's Day. Which I think is very important for us to at least recognize this morning for a lot of reasons, but largely because we are Unitarian Universalist and because of our values. And because the United Nations tells us that there really is no country on earth, although some are doing far better than others, where women truly have parity with men in their country. So this is still an international problem. And so it needs to be International Women's Day. And I think it's really fitting to bring it up particularly this morning because this is also our partner church Sunday. And what that means is that during the Cold War, Unitarians in the U.S. were separated from Unitarians in Eastern Europe, where our religion formally began 450-something years ago now. And we weren't able to communicate with each other for many decades. And in about the late 80s, as the Iron Curtain sort of fell, we were able to reestablish relationships, and we've been in relationship with our partner church in a little village called Felșoracos in what is now formerly Romania for 30 years this year. And it's been a wonderful partnership, and they do have women Unitarian ministers now, but they still struggle a lot harder there to get work and to be in meaningful ministerial positions than their male counterparts. And so as we begin to exchange our cultures and our relationships and our values, I think that's one of the gifts we can bring to our Eastern European counterparts by reminding them to evolve on this matter. So a good day today to bring this up as we celebrate our 30 years now being in partnership with a wonderful community in Eastern Europe, and you're going to hear more about that a little bit later. So let's take just a few moments now to greet one another, and as always, say hi to some folks you may or may not know. If you are joining us for the first time, try not to be too shy if you can help it, because we're very glad that you're here. Thank you, and there will be more opportunity, as always, to visit with one another during our social hour following the service, so please do stay around for that. Let's move forward now by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Our opening reflection is by Andrea Hawkins Camper. Gather we now into this space, this time when the wheel turns and the veil shatters. Gather we now to remember, to grieve, to prophesy, to complete our harvests before the long dark comes. Gather we now to tell the old stories and sing the old songs, to be as we have always been, the voice of our people eternal. Gather we now to celebrate that which was, that which is, and that which will be. Gather we now, as we have always done, united by story and bound by love.
Just a note before we sing our first hymn of the service, inside the service this morning, the bells you heard at the beginning of the service are a recording of our sister church's bells in Fel-Shawakas. So they come from there. Please rise as you're willing and able to sing our first in-service hymn of the morning. This is my song, number 159.
Todd, I'm trying our lav out here. Lavalier, is it working? Check, check, check. It is? Oh, thank you. All right, it's time for our story for all ages. So if anybody wants to come to the front of the church, I've got a friend today, as I usually do. I like your kitty cat dress. That's your mommy bought it? What a nice mommy you have. I want one. A kitty cat dress, not a mommy. case you're wondering. And you've got an animal on your shirt too. What do you have? And on your hat too. That's a sports team? A football team, sorry. I should have known. Actually, I don't know. But it looks good on you. So, it looks like a rat. That's what I was going to ask you, is what kind of friend do you think I brought today? Anybody know what this animal might be? A raccoon? That's a good guess. It's not a raccoon. It's not a rat. A mouse? It looks like a big mouse, doesn't it? A possum. Thank you. It is a possum. You want to show your face? He's kind of shy. He's kind of shy. You know, possums like to come out at night and they don't see so well because of the bright light. So he'll probably keep his eyes covered a lot of the time. Do you know why I know this possum is a he? How I know that? What do you know about opossums? They hang upside down. They have a long tail that is very strong. It's like having another arm, so they can hang from trees and sleep. That's pretty cool. What else do we know about opossums? What's that? They eat chickens? They probably do eat chickens. I think that. Yes, they eat chickens, and they also eat ticks, those little bugs, and that's very good for you because they can eat up to 5,000 ticks in one season. So it's good to have opossums around. They're actually not called possums. Sometimes we call them possums for short, but that's an Australian animal. This is an opossum, and it's actually an indigenous word that means the white animal because they have a bright white face that stands up, right? Stands out when you see them. And the other thing about opossums is they're what? They're a marsupial. Did you know that? No? Do you know what a marsupial is? So a marsupial is an animal that has a pouch to carry their young in after they're born. What is another type of marsupial? A kangaroo. Boy, this is cutting out, or I'm cutting out. Let me raise it just a little. So yes, a kangaroo and wallabies. But do you know what the first marsupial on Earth was? An opossum. Yes. The opossum was the first marsupial on Earth. And do you know how long they've been on Earth? 65 million years. They started at the same right after the dinosaurs got wiped out. Some possums are different. There's different kinds of possums. Now, let's try to count to 1,000,000, okay? Have you ever counted to 1,000,000? Because 65 million is a big number. So let's start, okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, if we counted to 1,000,000 and we didn't eat or sleep, you know how long it would take us to reach 1,000,000? It would take 11 and a half days before we finish counting to 1,000,000. So these guys have been around for a long time. This is I say, guy, this is a male opossum because he doesn't have a pouch. Not a mommy opossum. And what else can I tell you about? Oh, guess where they started? Guess where opossums started? What part of the world do you think they started in? Yes. Africa's a good one. Asia's a good guess. They started right here in North America. And when, at some point a long time ago, the continents were one and they broke apart and carried some of those opossums to other parts of the world, and they evolved into things like kangaroos and wallabies. And at 20 million years ago, all the opossums, all the marsupials in this country vanished. And somehow they found their way back eventually. So we now have possums all over the world. They can live in almost any kind of environment, hot environments, cold environments, in the forest, in the countries, and even in the cities. In fact, possums have adapted so well to living just about anywhere under any circumstances that there are as many possums in the country today as there were before Donald Trump was elected. So they really adapt well to difficult circumstances. Okay, so why do you think I'm talking about opossums today on our Partner Church Sunday? Why do you think? Because opossums remind me, because they've been around so long, and they've been all over the world, that they remind me that we also have been around a very long time, at least 450 years. And we have Unitarians all over the world. And sometimes if we think only of our immediate experiences and our immediate ideas and beliefs, we lose our connection to something that's rich and deep and profound and interesting, just like opossums. Isn't it interesting to know that they're so unique and yet they've been around for so long? So if I ever leave the Unitarian religion, I'm going to become an opossum. Okay, so that's all I had to say. We're gonna let you guys head out for religious education if you want, but I'm gonna kneel down while we're lighting your other chalice, and if you want to pet the possum, you can. Okay.
We light the children's chalice so that the light and warmth of the main chalice will follow our children into their educational program. We have a special collection today for our fellow Partnership Church in Felsoracos. So in your order of service, you should find an envelope if you'd like to contribute to that. We celebrate 30 years of our partnership. We support activities with the women's group, the youth group, and for special events in the village. We also help finance a project annually, which this year is to remodel a guest room in the minister's house. We are also saving for Reverend Polko and Orsi's anticipated visit here next year. We are grateful for your generosity. So please don't lick these envelopes, not only for the virus, but because we like to recycle them.
Oh
We'll now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds, and we begin with a candle for Mary Ann Winifred, who learned last month that her position with the community colleges is not going to be renewed next year. She's now looking for work and trying to stay calm and optimistic, and ask that we think about her at this difficult time, this transitional time in her life. Also a candle in honor of Beverly Baker, who passed away at age 82, peacefully surrounded by friends on Sunday, February 23rd. Many UUs were friends with Beverly, and she was very active and involved in the Spokane community and volunteered in our community for many generations. So we kindle a candle for her as well. Let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others you might be thinking of, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
Now is the time in our service for meditation. I invite you to find a comfortable and receptive posture. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. I will share a short poem which will be followed by silence. The Return by Jonathan Green. We are heartened when each year the barn swallows return. They find their old nests, teach their young to fly, lining up on the barn roof for their first flight. They remind us, for now, some rituals of this good earth continue. For our reading today, I had the good fortune of Skyping with our partner church minister, Reverend Zolan Palco, last week, along with his spouse, who is, again, also a minister, not the minister of our church in Felsharakos, but she does ministry nearby, Reverend Oshie. So here is the message that they asked me to give to you. From Reverend Zolan. Spokane brothers and sisters, I'm very happy to welcome everybody and am very pleased to have arrived upon this remarkable day. 30 years
It's not easy to say 30 years, but there are people who remember every minute of these 30 years. Countless photos, memories, and the relationship between our congregations is good. And these memories are good to remember that make it beautiful. It's our job as humans, creations of God, to be in relationship and to help each other. I count this remarkable occasion between our two partnerships as such a relationship. The parish of Felshiracos gives much thanks to Spokane's parish, and I think this is a special time for both congregations. Thank you very much for all our years of friendship. Thank you very much for your support, and I think with God's help, our partnership will last for many years. And this from Reverend Oshie. We don't see each other often, but I really wish you all the best that I can wish. As a human, as a minister, as a woman, I know we live in a world with huge problems. And I think the relationships and the friendships, the human relationships, are really important for us as we learn how to live with each other and how to learn to communicate with each other with our different languages and different places. You live there and we live here. But we are connected by the universal language of love. Zolan jumps in, and tradition. She completes her statement by saying, "So I'm really glad that we have him, honestly."
Soft through the darkened sky, gentle breezes singing, sweetly a lullaby to earth's children's bring. Homeward wends each his way, fox and bee and swallow, blackbird haze and day, and that to follow. Now all give thanks, grateful time of sorrow. Sleep our tills and folding banks, creatures without number. Softly through the darkened sky, gentle breezes sing, sweet lullaby to tune's children's ringing.
The Gospel of Matthew tells us Peter once came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, how many times should I forgive my brother and sister who sins against me. Up to 7 times? If you think about it, that's a pretty generous number. Right? Peter must have sounded pretty forgiving to those who heard him. We have a saying today, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Or as President George W. Bush put it, fool me once, shame on you, fool me, you can't fool me again. That's kind of a playful laugh at Bush's expense, but as I'm sure you know, I'm no one to talk given all the dyslexic lapses I've had in the pulpit over the years. The point is, we don't mind forgiving someone once, especially for an honest mistake, but most of us aren't going to tolerate continuous poor behavior. That's the stuff that abusive relationships are made of. It's like Peter asking, how many times should I allow myself to get punched in the gut before putting a stop to it? 7 times? Yeah, that's not going to work. So you can imagine his surprise when Jesus answered, I tell you not 7 times, but 70 times 7. But Jesus wasn't really saying that you should allow yourself to get socked 490 times, or even 77 times, as some translations say. To understand what he meant, it's necessary to first understand the significance of the number 7 to his Jewish community. The Jewish people, according to my understanding and research, began as a hodgepodge of economic refugees, including some who had been enslaved. As slaves, they weren't allowed to enjoy the same rights as everyone else. Today we refer to the lucky number 7, but in ancient times it was considered very unlucky. It was so unlucky, in fact, that the ancient Sumerian calculators didn't go past 6. So please take your Sumerian calculators out and I will show you what I mean. You didn't know that you have a Sumerian calculator, do you?
There's an app for that.
You do. There's an app for that. It's the original digital calculator, so just take out and look at the palm of your hand for me if you don't mind. And instead of just counting their 5 fingers like we do when we're trying to count, the Sumerians were sophisticated enough to use their thumb to count the sections of their 4 fingers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And every time they got to 12, they would hold up a finger on the other hand. Now, since they only had 5 fingers, 12 times 5, their calculator only went up to 60. Except when they got to 60, they didn't just hold up all 5 fingers, they made a fist as a symbol of completion. 6 was a holy number because of that. Now, they were very superstitious, and so anything past 6, which didn't symbolize wholeness and completion, was something they considered dangerous. And so Sumerians never did anything on the 7th day. The only people who had to work on the 7th day were their slaves, right? Jewish people as well as other slaves, right? So their slaves really never got a break. They longed for such a day that they could find a time for rest, a day of rest. So to the slaves, it was the 7th day that was holy. It was the day they saw everybody else getting a break. So 7 became their number of wholeness and completion. So you can understand why the ancient Hebrews, most of whom were slaves or otherwise exploited by the economic systems they came from, came up with the very first labor law in human history, guaranteeing that everyone gets a day off. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath unto the Lord thy God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the alien residents in your town. Why should everyone, every creature, get a chance to rest on the seventh day? Because it was a holy day, a holiday. And holy means whole. So Peter was being spiritually insightful with his question. But Jesus, perhaps wanting to move even farther beyond the letter of the law, said the number is really 70 times 7, meaning there is no end to it, not just to forgiveness, but to anything that is holy. Holiness, again, means wholeness and completion. Sin means the opposite, separation and unfulfillment, including preventing people from fulfilling their destiny and fulfilling themselves through their expression. That's sin. I begin with this explanation not because I want to talk about holiness and sin, or forgiveness for that matter. This sermon is about math. It's about miscalculations. It's about subtracting and dividing when we should be adding and increasing. It's about underestimating ourselves. Have you ever noticed how reductionistic people can be in their thinking, especially when it comes to religion? Like Peter, so many of us want to simplify our understanding of life so we don't have to deal with its uncertainties and its ambiguities. If we could just have a few rules, right, just the smallest number of them, to boil it all down so we know exactly what we need to do in every situation, wouldn't life be great? Jews and Christians have 10 commandments. Muslims have the 5 pillars of Islam. Buddhists have the 4 noble truths and the Eightfold Path, and Unitarian Universalists have 7 principles. I'm always disappointed, even alarmed, when I hear my fellow UUs boiling our religion down to just these principles. This isn't because I disagree with any of them. In fact, I cherish all of them, even if they are too verbose for most of us to remember. My problem with them is only that they can lead us to underestimate the deeper values and roots of our ancient religion. If we leave it at that, at just these 7 principles, then we have no past, because these principles were only founded or adopted in 1985, when they were voted on by our General Assembly. And this is why my friend and colleague, Reverend Dr. Davidson Lohr, has called Unitarian Universalism 2 small religions that merged in 1961. A brand new faith, defined by those 7 principles, he calls them. And I agree, if we are defined merely by these brand new 7 principles, which were originally written for Sunday school children, then we have gravely underestimated our value, our depth, and the richness of our religion, of our ancient religion. Let's look at the origins of UUism, Lohr says. The faith defined by these 7 principles, we don't have to go back very far. It's a brand new faith, but its origins were not religious. He argues that reducing our liberal religion to just 7 principles that no one can remember, as he puts it, prevents us from being a religion, because it severs us from those deeper, longer, richer religious roots, our heritage and our history. The difference between liberal religion and the religion called UUism, defined by 7 principles, he continues, is the difference between a religion and a social club, a political party, a secular or cultural identity. It is the difference between the authority of life taken deeply and the authority of a club. We are more than a club. We are more than the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations that began in 1961, and far more than 7 principles adopted 35 years ago, a century after the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane was founded. So if someone were to come to me and ask, how should I describe our religion? With seven principles? I'd respond 7 times 70 principles. For our liberal religion is replete the richness of traditions that cannot be boiled down to just a few brief statements. We are far more than that. Our 7 principles are extraordinary and an extraordinary articulation of some of our values, and also reflect some of the highest aspirations of humanity itself. But removed from the context of our religion, including its history and traditions and complexities, they become, as Davidson Lohr reminds us, the 7 dwarfs. When we reduce our ancient religion to just 7 statements adopted by a few people at a General Assembly only a few years ago, we underestimate it. We miscalculate its profoundness, its richness, its scope. I like to actually boil our principles down even further to just 7 words. Dignity, equality, openness, freedom, democracy, justice, and unity. These words cover a lot of moral turf and reflect some of our greatest values and our highest aspirations. But there's far more to our liberal religious tradition than can be summarized by 7 words, or even 7 times 70. When we start our ritual each Sunday, we say we're here to create community, to find meaning, to work for justice. These are different statements reflecting our congregation's own articulation of its principles and purposes. They don't conflict with or diminish the 7 principles, but add another layer of meaning to what we're about, and vice versa. A couple years ago, after spending 2 weeks with our partner church in Felșeracos, Romania, one of our teenagers, Blue Palmer, spoke to us of her transformative experience being with traditional Unitarians and visiting many of our historical, if not holy sites, marking the beginning of Unitarianism 417 years before those 7 principles were adopted. 417 years before those 7 principles were adopted. Blue, who grew up in our church and heard our principles emphasized a lot during her religious education, told us she couldn't remember them. But after visiting the Transylvania area where Unitarianism began, she felt she had become part of a tradition much larger than our church. That's what's so important about our partner church program. The new ministers at our partner church in Felșeracos have told me more than once that it's important that ours be a mutual relationship, that they are able to help us as much as we help them. And while we certainly have different resources and gifts that we can share with them, our 30-year relationship has given us riches that we can't easily find here in our church or in our religious education program. But what Blue Palmer and others have found when visiting them and discovering that we are part of an ancient and global tradition. I was on that same trip, and on our way to and from the village, we stopped at a few of Unitarianism's historic sites. We went to Turda and visited the church where the first and only Unitarian king, the Hungarian prince John Sigismund, signed the Edict of Turda in 1568, humanity's first religious toleration law guaranteeing that nobody shall be compelled to believe what they don't or be punished for believing what they do. 1568. The year we were there, the whole country was actually celebrating the edict's 450th anniversary. Then we went to Albaluya, to the church where King Sigismund and his mother, Queen Isabella, are entombed, and were able to touch their stone sepulchres. And we saw the Tower of Diva, a fortress where Sigismund's Unitarian bishop, who converted him to Unitarianism, was indulged and died after the young king's accidental death for violating new anti-innovation laws that made it illegal to express new ideas. The local Unitarian minister joined us and held a religious service for us from within that very tower. No more than a tourist location for some, but a holy site for us, one of our holy sites. That's the gift that our friends and partners in Fel Shirakos give us. Roots, history, and the fullness and richness of being part of something ancient and profound. They've given us 70 times 7. These days, our church, which was founded in 1887, more than 100 years again before the 7 principles were written for Sunday school, we have several banners representing the different world religions in the back of our fellowship area, including paganism and humanism. But this mustn't be because we have become so unaware of our history and tradition that we think, as many do, that we are a religion that believes everything. I like to think we're a religion that doesn't believe much of anything. And that we have no ideological roots of our own. Rather, we hang these banners because we believe in freedom and our common humanity, and that we can benefit from each other's wisdoms. That we don't have to be afraid of one another's wisdoms. That's a big part of what Unitarianism has always been about. Our brothers and sisters in Eastern Europe weren't part of the 1961 merger. That's an American phenomenon. They are Unitarians, not Unitarian Universalists. Yet this common humanity ethic, dating back to the Edict of Torda, is fundamental to their religion too. This kind of radically inclusive universalism with a small u has always been part of Unitarianism. Our faith is also rooted in the Abrahamic tradition with a liberal hermeneutic. That is, we interpret Judaism and Christianity through a liberal mindset, the mindset that is of freedom and of justice. Unitarianism may have formally begun in the 16th century in Eastern Europe, but its ideas and values date back to historical Jesus. Unitarianism is defined by a disbelief in Jesus' divinity. To his original followers, he was considered but a man with godly teachings about how we should treat one another, but not considered a God himself. They had what we call a humanistic Christology, meaning they thought Jesus was human. They valued him because of his profound teachings about loving one another and being responsible for each other's welfare. That's the humanistic ethic. So Unitarianism originated as a humanistic Christology and a humanistic ethic, which is why humanism eventually was born from Unitarianism, as you know, right here in our church in the early part of the 20th century. Our devotion to the principle of reason has also long been a principle of Unitarianism, especially here in the U.S., where it emerged independently from European Unitarianism, influenced largely by Enlightenment philosophy. It was originally called Arminianism, in opposition to the New Birth movement that said we must all be born again. Arminianism at the time did not accept the notion of original sin, of the belief in humanity's depravity, total depravity, believing instead that humans are born with the capacity of both sin and righteousness, of doing both good and evil. And this emphasis on humanity rather than divinity and on human goodness and agency further led to the rejection of the supernatural and miraculous components of religion. This, in turn, like all Enlightenment thinking, resulted in a critical eye and a need for empirical proof for our beliefs. As I've often stated, the original bylaws of this church, written again in 1888, stated the authority for its belief is reason. The method of finding its beliefs is scientific. Its aim is to crush superstition and establish the facts of religion. I think that's still meaningful for a lot of us. Our liberal principle of freedom in conscience and freedom of speech is also ancient. The Edict of Torda, which our partner church council describes as an act of religious tolerance and freedom of conscience on its website, states that in every place the preachers shall preach and explain the gospel, each according to his understanding of it, and if the congregation like it, well. If not, no one shall compel them, for their souls would not be satisfied. But they shall be permitted to keep a preacher whose teaching they approve. Therefore, none of the superintendents or others shall abuse the preachers. No one shall be reviled for his religion by anyone, according to the previous statutes, and it is not permitted that anyone should threaten anyone else by imprisonment or by removal from his post for his teaching. I think some of us have forgotten that when we're disconnected from our opossum beginnings a long time ago. This is why our original 132-year-old bylaws also state that our first principle is freedom of opinion and is subject to no censure for heresy. So yes, the 7 principles profoundly articulate some of our values, but so does our mission statement: create community, find meaning, work for justice. And so does our richer, longer history, including those principles I've narrowed down to reason, freedom of conscience, and the humanistic or common humanity ethic. And if we don't connect with our more ancient tradition, we are not a religion at all. We are only a social club, as many critics already accuse us of being. We're just a wayward modern cult blowing aimlessly in the winds. This is the value, the gift, our partner church program and our now 30-year relationship with our partner church in Felshiracos have given us and continue to give us. They've given us an anchor in a storm of confusion to hold us steady. Roots connecting us to the richness of our past and to the traditional values that have helped define and shape our liberal religious tradition. The 7 principles that help shape our Western brand of Unitarian Universalism are not part of their tradition. Yet the wealth they've given us is 70 times 7, a number that can only multiply as we continue in this extraordinary friendship. So to our friends in Felshiracos, thank you for the great wealth that you have shared with us over these many years. As you say, with God's help, we will have many more. Thank you.
We are going to close with a Transylvanian hymn tune this morning. It's number 37 in our hardback hymnals. It's called God Who Fills the Universe. And in consultation with Julie Jose, I looked at this hymn. You will notice in this church that we don't use the word God often. However, our brothers and sisters in Fel Sharakas do, but I think they have a larger thought of that, and you will find that in the text of this hymn. Please rise to sing God Who Fills the Universe. Nicolina will play the tune completely through for you.
God who fills the universe, from the atom to the stars, make firm my changeful heart, so I may do my part and bring joy to all the earth. God who webs the universe with amazing mysteries, make glad my fragile soul, so I can see life whole and bring hope to all on earth. God who keeps the universe by the truths of living love, make strong that love in me, so I can set it free and bring peace to all on earth.
Our benediction is by John C. Morgan. In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.
Shalom.